My guest at this time is Andrew Moran. He is a freelance writer who also serves as an economics correspondent for LibertyNation.com. He's getting a lot of attention for a column he wrote on January 2nd, which targets the conventional wisdom that Democrats are the anti-war party and Republicans are much more disposed to support one. Andrew says the track record shows something very different. And Andrew, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's easy to see how the conventional wisdom became the conventional wisdom. It was the left mostly that marched against the Vietnam War, and we obviously saw endless protests of the Iraq War during the Bush administration. So it seems like this idea came to mind when the Democrats, who were only too happy to cheer the exit of U.S. forces from Iraq, are suddenly having vapors now that President Trump wants to take U.S. forces out of Syria. Explain how you came up with this approach to conventional wisdom.
Well, first you have to look throughout the Democratic Party. It was Woodrow Wilson who dragged the U.S. into World War I. President Harry Truman sent thousands of young men to Korea. Johnson was the one who escalated American involvement in Vietnam. The Democratic leadership approved the Iraq War. I think it was nearly half of Democratic Congress supported the Iraq resolution, and about two-thirds of Democratic senators voted for the Iraq War. So it's not as if Democrats, or at least the Democratic leadership, are actually actively campaigning against these wars. When Obama was in office, he destabilized an entire region. He killed American citizens without due process. He intensified the drone bombing campaign. And where was the left? The progressives who always marched on the streets during the Bush years, they were quiet. They didn't do anything. Democrats just sat in their hands and allowed Obama to not only start more wars, he continued his predecessors' wars as well.
Is the bottom line here, Andrew, that if the president of my party wants to do it, I'm okay with it?
Of course not. You should have a series of guiding principles, and if you're anti-war, you should maintain that position. I'm really I don't sympathize politically with progressives, but I feel for the young Democrats who they're getting involved in politics, and they turn on CNN and they see Max Boot and they see Ralph Peters and they see them agreeing with all these leftist personalities, and they want to start new wars, and they want to stay in Syria, and they want to stay in Afghanistan, and they want to police the world. But then an administration official like Stephen Miller goes on CNN and he rails against the nation building of the last 20, 30 years. He says that who voted to police the world? Who voted to overthrow governments? Yet he gets met with scorn and mockery because he says truths that perhaps if Obama said about a decade ago, it would be all over the news saying what an intelligent being he is, how anti-war is. He's really for the American people. He's really for the troops. So no, if you should have principles, no matter who the leader is. It's not like that old Groucho Marx joke where he says, here are my principles, and if you don't like them, I have others.
Well, I get that. My question, though, is that essentially what we're seeing? Is if Obama, for example, wants to go into Syria, more Democrats would favor that than if the exact same circumstances were happening and George W. Bush were president, for example.
Mm-hmm. What you're seeing right now with President Trump, he wants to withdraw from Syria, but there are two wings of the Republican Party. You're seeing they're being fractured. You have the old wing, you have the Lindsey Grahams who are warning against withdrawing from Syria, and then you have the Rand Paul wing who said that's the best thing that the United States government should do. So you're seeing more dissent on the new Republican side of being anti-war than you did see of Democrats during Obama.
Where is the common ground for Republicans on this? Because as you point out in the column, and as you just mentioned, there's really three parts to the Republican Party now: hawks, doves, and those who have had a change of heart here after they come to the conclusion that the investment of blood and treasure in Iraq was not worth it in their estimation. So how does the party come to any sort of consensus when it comes to when is the right time to act?
I don't think that's going to happen. What I think is going to need to happen is that the dinosaurs of the Republican Party, the Lindsey Grahams, they need to leave the party. You're seeing the young blood. You're seeing the Rand Pauls. You're seeing the Mike Lees. You're seeing Thomas Massey. You're seeing Justin Amash. They're the ones who are going to lead the Republican Party in the future. You shouldn't make concessions with American blood. You shouldn't send men and women to their deaths in foreign territories just to appease someone like Lindsey Graham who needs to invade every single corner of the globe. The American people don't want that. And, I'm really happy to see that more Republicans who are the neoconservative side during the Bush years, they're seeing the disaster of that foreign policy and leaning towards more of a non-interventionist foreign policy that Rand Paul's father, Ron Paul, advocated for.
You really think the libertarian side of this debate is gaining the foothold in the Republican Party?
is working with President Trump. He has more of a dovish foreign policy than most presidents in the last since the Second World War. He's not starting any new wars. He's not invading more territories. He's leaving these countries. He called out the Iraq War during the primaries. Well, no other except Rand Paul, of course. Well, no other Republican did. So the libertarian wing of the Republican Party is winning this battle.
Let's get into the electoral politics of this in our last minute or so here. How do you expect this to play out on the 2020 campaign stage? Obviously, at this point, Trump doesn't have any primary opposition, but on the Democratic side, you're likely to have a whole lot of different views on this. The more traditional folks like Joe Biden, perhaps, will think differently on this than somebody like Bernie Sanders, and there's a whole smorgasbord of people all around them. So what do you expect to be the dominant talking points, dominant positions on the left when it comes to this?
For a long time, I've argued that Tulsi Gabbard is going to be the only anti-war candidate on that debate stage. You already see how the mainstream media is going after Tulsi Gabbard. She's called everything from a Putin puppet to an Assad agent to a right-wing lunatic, because she's questioned the official statement in Syria, and she's warned against regime change. She's warned against overthrowing democratically elected governments. So she's going to be the only anti-war candidate on the stage, and you're going to see the Joe Bidens, you're going to see the Kamala Harrises, you're going to see the Cory Bookers, who are going to actually toe the neoconservative line, which is such an interesting development, because the Democratic Party, they were supposed to be for so long against all these foreign interventions. So I'm really looking forward to the CNN debates. I'm really looking forward to see the CBS News and ABC News, who are going to attack Trump for not bombing enough. If you want a hint of how the media covers something, look when Trump first bombed Syria last year. Fareed Zakaria declared that Trump is now president, and Brian Williams delivered a poetic soliloquy about the missiles. So Tulsi Gabbard's going to be the main target, and they're already trying to take her out with all these negative stories about her, of how she's anti-gay, and that she's really a puppet for either Russia or Assad.
Thanks so much for your time today. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Andrew Moran is a freelance writer, serves as economics correspondent at libertynation.com. I'm Greg Corombos reporting for Radio America.